Okay, it looks like we have everyone here, so we're going to go ahead and start our November 16th City Council meeting. So if you would please call the roll, Ms. Clerk. I'm sorry. I jumped ahead of myself. We have with us a very special person tonight, a dignitary in fact, Miss Emily Shane Johnson, our brand new little Miss Lowell. She's going to come up and lead us in Pledge of Allegiance. So please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Give her a great hand. We're so proud of her. I was driving down the radio one day and heard Kerm mention little Miss Lowell, and I started listening real close because of, and heard her say the Pledge of Allegiance and did a great job. Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Solomon.
Here.
Mr. Morrill.
Here.
Mr. Spurlock.
Here.
Mr. Williams.
Here.
Mr. Wright.
Here.
Mrs. Latham.
Here.
Mrs. Hauserman.
Here.
Mr. Brock.
Here.
All present, so we have a quorum. That sound just made me a reminder. Please, everyone, take your cell phones, put them on vibrate instead of ring, if you would, please. And with that, you council members, you have the minutes in front of you for consideration and approval. Any comments or questions?
I have a comment on the minutes. Gotta find them here first. Under the item 8, public forum speakers, I move that we delete the third sentence to the end of it, starting with "do this issue" and ending with "wants the minutes to reflect." I could not find that anywhere being stated by anyone from the council in the tape. It is simply not there.
Okay, we'll just treat this as a motion then. So Mrs. Hauserman has made a motion to delete that. Does anyone want to second that?
Second.
Okay, so Ms. Latham has seconded that. We'll just call a roll on that if you don't mind. So all in favor of deleting as yes vote. Those who would leave it as it is would be a no vote. Roll call, please.
Mr. Brock.
Yes.
Mr. Wright.
No.
Mr. Williams.
No.
Mr. Spurlock.
Point of information, did you have that on the minute on your tape?
No, that's not on there.
Okay. Yes.
I have a copy of the tape and it is not on there.
That's what I just stated.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
Question was it on the tape? And your vote was a yes? Okay.
Mr. Morrill.
No.
Mr. Solomon.
Yes.
Ms. Latham.
Yes.
Ms. Hauserman.
This is a move to delete it, correct? Yes.
Okay, so we have 5 yes, 3 no's, and we'll note that that will be deleted then from the minutes. Okay, any other questions, comments?
I would like to make a comment then on this. I think the council should be very concerned on approving things in the minutes that are not stated in the council meeting. In the future, I suggest that you give due consideration to that.
Anyone else? Question? Comments? Okay. With noting that that sentence is deleted, we'll just do by voice vote. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Minutes approved with that exception. Next item is a public forum where you the public, have a chance to address myself and the council You have 2 minutes to do so. Your comments will be taken under advisement. The rules of the council are printed on your agenda sheet for your information. So with that, we start off the sign-in sheet here. Mr. Doug France. Pardon me? Well, let's go. Let's go ahead and go. I mean, we're calling it in order, so we'll.
My name's Doug France. First of all, I'd like to congratulate everyone who has won office and made the best person win on the runoff.
If you do something for me, sir, just pick up the microphone there and make sure it's on and slip it in that holder. We have to make sure we get you on tape for recording purposes.
Okay. My name's Doug France. I'd like to congratulate everyone who won in the election and made the best person win on the runoffs coming up. And I would like to know if the City Council is aware of the annexation ordinance by the state, 14-40-303, and what the obligations is of the city government in the city whenever they annex property in. And also 14-40-302, authority of exceptions. Is the city aware of the state rules and laws regarding annexation?
Is your question to us? Are we aware of that? I'm going to defer to Mr. Kicklack as our city attorney if he would like to answer that.
Yes. Okay. Are you aware of the amount of time that you have for the services?
Yes.
What is that time?
Well,
I
let
thought you
me
said
say,
you were, it's 3 years.
Okay.
And how long have we been annexed in for the west side? The west side of Lowell. How long have we been annexed in for?
his question was, who is we? Who are
West
we?
side, the people that y'all vote that was annexed in on the west side of Lowell. Wasn't it,
It was.
in 2003?
It was annexed in 2003. I think summer 2003.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have. Apologize. I think it looks like Larry. Terry.
My name is Terry Sayre. Mr. Mayor, honorable members of the City Council. What I'm here for tonight is the selling of animals in front of the Arvest Bank. I would like to see some kind of ordinance prohibiting the sale of these animals. It not only creates a nuisance in our intersections, but it also, when the animals are no longer wanted or outgrow the family, because as you all know, if they're selling boxer puppies grow up to be very large and very destructive in a single household. They become a burden to the city after they're no longer wanted. Then they go to the shelters, the rescues, and they use the phrase AKC registered puppies to sell their dogs. AKC does not guarantee the quality of their dogs. They're just a registrier. I own AKC registered dogs myself, and you send in the paperwork and they'll register you. The branch manager of the Arvest Bank says he no longer wants these people set up there. We spoke to him some time ago, but they wait until the bank closes and then moves in and does their setup. It started with one lady this summer up in the 95-degree range, no shade, very little water for her puppies. Now it has grown to, as a matter of fact, Sunday there was 4 people set up with 6 different breeds of dogs. If there's, I'd be more than willing to help, write some kind of ordinance, get with the animal control officer, whatever we have to do to take care of this.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
sir.
I would like to make a comment on that, if I may. There is not only a problem with animals being sold there, but also automobiles. So I firmly agree with you that there needs to be an ordinance preventing this, but it needs to make sure that it encompasses more than animals. The fact that people move into property that is not theirs and set up business needs to be taken care of, whether it be animals or whether it be cars or whatever. Thank you.
Mr. Carnahan, would you do me a favor? Make sure that microphone is both on and the mute is pulled up also.
Mr. K-Fine? Would we be able to enforce that under our no, if they don't have a business license?
I'm just curious. You probably have a peddling ordinance, probably have a business license ordinance. And, often you can hear me say that code enforcement is complaint driven. And I think, that's an official complaint right there. That's kind of putting code enforcement on notice. And my expectation is it's going to get followed up now that it's out there, Code enforcement doesn't usually have the time or just the resources to go looking for problems, but when they're made aware of them, then that's the kind of thing that they'll react to.
Point of information, please.
Okay, Ms. Latham.
I spoke with a lady this weekend about this issue, and apparently the police were talked to, and someone told these people that called that the council had approved this. Has the council addressed this issue to anybody's knowledge in the last 2 years? There's not an ordinance existing right now that says this is okay, is there? Or that says it's not okay?
Well, let me say this is the first that I'm aware of an official complaint. I'm not saying that the police department wasn't called, but we'll look and see where we can go, what we should do. If we need to come back with an ordinance, then we can do that. But I'm not sure debate here tonight on that issue will resolve it. We need to look and see where we can and should go, and we'll do that. Okay. All right, next, Ms. Carol Harmon. Again, just to remind you, I'm going to give everybody a 20-second, a 10-second heads up on their time.
My name is Carol Harmon. I live at 525 South Science Street. I have a question as to concerning the Arkansas State Police. Are they not moving to Lowell any longer?
Our last word were they were planning on relocating off of Gold Springs Road in Lowell.
Okay. There's a rumor that didn't go through.
I don't know what rumor is. I'm just saying from our perspective, they came to us and their plans were to relocate to Lowell.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next is Junior Pearson.
Name's Junior Pearson, 405 Adams, speaking on behalf of my father. When you annexed the people into the city, plus or minus 3 years ago, has there been a plan devised on where the fire hydrants is going to be in the new area that you did annex in?
I believe Springdale has an overall master plan for their water system.
Springdale does?
And the fire hydrants probably would show up on it. I don't know that they do in that detail, but there's a master plan for the Springdale water utilities water system in Lowell.
Would that also be for the sewer also? Would they have the master plan on that also?
I am not sure, Gary, that they have detailed that out that much.
Who would I need to contact in Springdale to look at that map, or to look and see what they have proposed so far?
I believe just a phone call to the utilities down there and ask probably for the engineering department. I would assume would be the correct department.
I'll give them a call tomorrow. Thank you.
Okay, next is Miss Jane Fields. If there's an item on the agenda you want to address, let's wait till that moment of time. Okay, good point. Okay, sorry, and I should have made that clear. So if there's an item you want to address, wait till that point. Otherwise, at this time. Okay, next, Mr. Perry Long. Okay. All right, next is Mr. Ronnie Breland.
My name's Ronnie Breland. I live at 119 South Brandon. I'd like to congratulate all the winners and also the people that's in the runoffs. My question's for the mayor. Mayor, I'm guessing you probably have a mail out of everybody in the city that's registered voter. But my question is how you rate people and everything on this document, and how come you didn't mail it out to everybody in the city when it says this document created and paid for by Mayor Phil Biggers, and it has how you rated people and where you went to college and everything, and how you can rate people.
As that's a political document, I'm not going to discuss that tonight, Mr. Breland. Okay, that's all that's on our sign-up sheet. If you're new to the council and not really familiar that we have you sign in and would like to address us, I open the floor up for you to do so at this time for 2 minutes. Anyone like to do that? Okay, seeing none, we're going to call the public forum closed at 7:17. And we'll move on to our committee reports. Mr. Solomon on the sewer report.
The sewer committee met last week, and we discussed the where we go from here as far as with the step system. We're going to have to form some sort of a body that would control that. So we talked about, how we want that set up. Mr. Kicklack had kind of suggested to us that we hold off until we actually start collecting bills. That to have an entity there until that point is kind of premature. So we said we would meet again to discuss it some more. We also had a man from lives on Daisy Circle come and talk to us, and he asked the city to look into what the cost would be in running sewer to Daisy Circle. For those that aren't aware, they're a neighborhood that's on septic tanks. He was saying that he had a septic tank failure, and that he actually said that when it rains, they actually have to find another place to stay because they aren't able to use their sewer at that point. Mr. Carnahan said that he would research that and find out what costs would be involved, and see if the city might be able to do a profit sharing, or a shared cost sharing thing. I asked, and the committee asked also that we include Sabre Heights on that, because Sabre Heights is also looking at a lot of failed septic tanks. So Mr. Carnahan's going to try to add that in. We think that we can probably do it cheaper if it's one project like that. And that was it.
Thank you, sir.
We did ask that they put the sewer problem of Sabre Heights and Daisy Circle at the top of the CIP list because of the public health hazard. And I think that is a very important thing, that it be considered and worked on as soon as possible. Thank you.
Okay, next, Mr. Ryan Moore, our information specialist administrator, is going to give us an overview of the city website, GIS, I believe. Probably making his way in here, Mr. Ryan. Okay, Ms. Beverly just pointed that out, so I apologize on that. All right, no old business, so we'll move on to new business. Number one is the introduction of the section amendment to Section 8 multifamily housing. Mr. Carnahan, I guess that's your sponsorship.
Thank you. We have following what happened in Springdale with the multifamily housing problems that they had there. We feel very fortunate that the city of Lowell has not, at this point, had those kind of problems. But we also feel like it would be wise for us to take a proactive move to implement. We don't have any multifamily housing standards specifically in the city of Lowell. We've been very fortunate that developers who have built multifamily housing units here have done a good job, we feel like, overall. But we don't have anything that prevent others from building some less desirable multifamily housing in the city. And Springdale had a lot of problems, adopted a multifamily housing code as a reaction to the problems they were having. We have studied their code, and at the Planning Commission level, we had a public hearing, and the Planning Commission looked at this code over a period of time, and we felt like it would be a wise thing for the city of Lowell to adopt the multifamily housing code, and we've made a copy of the Planning Commission has voted unanimously to refer it to the City Council with a, if I may say, a do-pass recommendation. We are just introducing you to this tonight. We have put the proposed regulations in your packet for you to study. We're not asking you to vote on them tonight, but we do plan, unless you have an objection, we do plan to have Mr. Kicklack prepare an ordinance for your next city council meeting, and ask you at your, first city council meeting in December to consider voting and adopting these multifamily housing standards. There's a lot there to read, but we have condensed it quite a bit from what Springdale had and tried to keep the meat of what's in there. I might just mention a few things quickly. Is that these standards require a developer to cluster neighborhoods of multifamily units rather than putting them in long rows. They have to use a variety of building orientations. They can't just cookie cutter create a row of a multifamily housing. They also have to use curving streets and avoid straight streets or very wide streets to minimize speeding in the multifamily housing project. Another thing is that this ordinance or these regulations include a section called crime prevention through environmental design. And that's very good reading. I hope you'll study that section in particular. It talks about lighting, the location of windows. It talks about that parking lots have to be visible from the doors and windows of the units, and also playgrounds and recreation areas, so that there aren't hidden areas for a criminal activity. Low shrubbery, low fencing, and things like that. A couple of other things is the architecture of the buildings themselves have to be, the codes is going to require that their roof and facade of the building have to be broken up or changed every 50 feet. So it can't just be a long, straight, rectangular building. It can't be monotonous or featureless in its mass and design of the building. The materials have to be 50% brick, concrete masonry, or stone. And the rear, if they're backed up to a street, the rear walls have to be articulated, or meaning that the rear walls also have to have design features. Can't just be a long, straight rear wall. Fences, there's a lot about landscaping in this code. One thing I'll point out is that fences can't be set just right on the right-of-way or property line. They have to be set back 15 feet from the property line, with landscaping then between the fences and the right-of-way line. And the fences have to have breaks columns or changes in materials every 50 feet. Can't just build one long monotonous fence line. There's a lot about lighting, walkway scale lighting, and keeping glare from escaping from the apartment complex. And then there's also a section about maintenance, requiring that they replace plants, maintain their parking lots, rework their parking lots, restripe them routinely, keep their buildings well maintained and painted. So I think you'll actually enjoy it. There's a lot of good information in this ordinance, and so we present it to you tonight just for you to take home and read and study, and we'll be back again in December, unless you had a question right now.
I have a question and then I have a comment. When you refer to dwelling units, is that an individual apartment?
Yes, it is.
Okay. My comment is, when you're looking at security, and I know you arranged several things outside the buildings, please take into consideration inside the building, in the what would be a lobby area or the entryway area. It's very common in apartment buildings in larger cities that the first thing, if someone wants to rob someone, attack them or whatever, they destroy the lighting within the lobby area. And then the person coming in is not aware that there is anyone there.
That's good. Good. I'll make a note.
From practical experience, I know that.
Okay, I'll make a note of that. Anyone else tonight?
Mr. Brock?
Yeah, Gary, I was just wondering, have we had a lot of feedback so far from developers that actually like to build apartments and stuff? I mean, it sounds like this would enhance certainly the attractiveness of these complexes and all that. I just wonder what kind of feedback we've had. Is there too many regulations where we're just going to discourage them all from even coming to town?
We've provided copies of this to the three people who have built in Lowell in the past. No negative comments at this point, although I will qualify that by saying that they have already shown most of them are meeting these standards voluntarily. But also I might just mention that in Springdale, that was a serious concern, what you just said about driving developers out of Springdale. But instead, they reported that they have not had any decrease in the request or proposals to build multifamily housing in Springdale since this ordinance passed. And that's what it's done is what they said was it had leveled the playing field, meaning that everyone now has to meet the same minimum standards. In the past, they had a problem with, because there was such a demand for multifamily housing, people were charging the same rents for whether it was a nice brick apartment with landscaping and playgrounds, or if it was just a very poorly built box in rows with no amenities, and they were able to charge the same rents. And this has leveled the playing field and given a more consistent quality for the dollar, for the rent value. So their overall reaction there, they said, had been very positive. I'd encourage you, if you know someone in Springdale on the City Council or Planning Commission, you might give them a call and get their history on it. But that's the report that was given to me.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Moore?
Gary, if you would refer to page 16,
Okay.
3-B. I've got a little bit of trouble with referring to another city's ordinances or chapters in their ordinances within our ordinances.
Right.
I
We
think
need
the
to
paragraph that you're referring to is there's 56-33 minimum tree and shrub planting requirements. I ran a copy off of that, and it's in much larger print than what we have here. I would certainly like to see that included in our ordinance so we don't have to make reference back to another city's ordinances.
No, I appreciate that. We actually, that had been pointed out to us by the Planning Commission, and we failed here in getting this copy to you. We've changed that to refer to the Lowell landscaping ordinance, which is adequate for that. So you're right on to point that out. We'll correct that and make sure that it's correct next time.
Mr. Wright?
Wanted to,
Okay, guys, let's.
I wanted to further comment about Mr. Brock's comments or questions. I followed it through the paper when Springdale was adopting their ordinance, and I believe that they also, when they were writing their code, which we took this from, they included developers in that discussion. So, and then one other thing I wanted to mention is that this copy that the Planning Commission has adopted is less restrictive than Springdale's. So it's a little less restrictive than theirs, and it has been, there has been input from the developers put into that, but not through our Planning Commission. Other than we sent a copy out to have questions from those 3 developers, but that was it.
Ms. Latham?
I need a little help understanding the footage. It says that you can build on 40%, buildings can cover 40%, is that correct? Well,
Let me get with you there. It's been a while since I've looked at this.
Page 3, site planning A, the maximum building area is 40% of the land area, and that would be talking about the actual apartments or actual buildings, correct? And then you've got 20% for open common area, so that leaves 40% for streets and parking, is that correct?
Right. I'm following you.
Okay. How does that compare to, say, a commercial property or something? How much do we allow people to cover in other building projects? Like homes or like a subdivision?
20% green space is pretty consistent, I think, in all of our codes.
What about the building coverage,
I believe that in the overlay district, it's 25%.
For green space, but what about building coverage? Is it commonly 40%?
I can't remember. I'm sorry.
Well, I think the reason that we have those numbers in there is because if you let them build these multifamily housing units on more than 40%, then what you wind up with is no parking. So that was the reason for that. So you take 40% and then the 20% for green space, that leaves you approximately about 40% of the land for parking, which the cars take up more room than most of the apartments.
That's what I was trying to make the connection. Is that how much parking you actually do need then for that kind of? And also on that item, number A, you've got the typo there. Do you see that where it says 1,000 and then in parentheses it's got 1,200?
Okay, I see that.
Should that be 1,000 or 1,200?
Let me see. We probably need to look back at the document that we started with to get that. Usually when it's the typewritten words would be more difficult to have a typo on than the numbers. So I'm going to guess it's 1,000, but we'll go back to the original document to check that out.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. With that, please look that over. Again, that will be coming before you at our next council meeting with an ordinance. So any feedback prior to then would be greatly appreciated to the staff. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. I should have opened a public forum before we move on. Thank you.
My name is Jane Fields. I live at 305 Robinson Avenue. On this multifamily housing, I don't think it should be allowed in Lowell. I think we should be able to, I don't think more apartments for multi-housing is going to be a good deal, because I think we're going to have the same thing as Roger has. We're going to have more drugs. I don't think we have enough police to police the area. I think we're going to have more problems with illegal immigrants. I would like to say that I am not a prejudiced person. My daughter-in-law is Hispanic, and my grandchildren are, but they are legal. This multifamily housing is going to be the ruination of Lowell as we know it as of now, just the way it was in Rogers and Springdale. I am not for it at all. I don't mean to be hateful or rude, but I think it's going to ruin our city. You know, we're a small town and we need to stay a small town. It's not mean that we don't need, you know, good businesses here and schools and everything else. But the more multifamily housing that you have, apartments, you know, I think it's going to be the ruination of our area.
Thank you. Compliment you on your first time to the podium. You stayed within your 2 minutes. Did great.
I'm surprised.
Anyone else like to address this?
I have to kind of agree with her. I don't know where they're going to build all these at, but, you know, the police force, they're running rampant as it is, and the fire department, they're running rampant. So if you build a lot of multifamily homes, you're just kind of stretching them to the limits. And, you know, police and fire don't get paid enough as it is already. And you look at Rogers, like, you see Rogers up there like on Easy Street all the time. They're always in the news where they've got a lot of drugs and arrests and break-ins and everything. Same way down in Springdale. And all that's multifamilies. And they've got like the little commons area and everything. Same way down there at Springdale. So it's the thing I'd like to ask is who's going to police this area and everything? I mean, are you going to have police officers go down there like ART and watch security over it all the time? I mean, that's something y'all need to sit and think about before you ever pass this thing, because this is something that you really need to stop and think about.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Let me clarify something here, and you may be going there, Mr. Williams. Lowell is not building any multifamily housing, nor do have any intention to do so. I'm picking up perhaps that may be a thought, and it was said once before. This is simply to set some standards. So if someone comes into Lowell and says, we're going to build some multifamily units, they have to adhere to these guidelines. Right now, we don't have any guidelines, and there are zoning areas in Lowell that they could come into right now without any standards other than just meet the basic large-scale standards and build multifamily. So I hope that clarifies. Lowell is not building any multifamily houses and has no intention to do so. Is that where you're going, Mr. Williams?
Yeah, I just wanted everyone to know that we're not proposing to build apartments. We're just trying to, lay this out. If someone comes before us, that they have to follow these guidelines.
Okay. Ms. Hauserman?
Did the proposal for, I think it was called the stations, the one along the railroad track, was that withdrawn? Or are they not building it?
No, they're prior to this. They've actually been through large scale. They are approved. They have to meet the overlay requirements, but beyond that, there's no specifications other than the PUD rezone that was done, which that had some pretty good controls in it because it was a planned unit development. But other than that, there are some areas that are zoned appropriately for multifamily housing that they could just come and build some multifamily. So that's why this design standards are planning commissions looked at them and recommended them.
I do think we should take due consideration of the points that have been made by the audience here tonight, and to watch very carefully the number of apartment units that we could potentially end up in this community.
I understand, but if a piece of property is zoned for multifamily housing, we have no recourse but to allow them the entitlement that they have on a piece of property. Now, if we need to go back and revisit our comprehensive plan to remove any and all multifamily housing, then that is something the council can commission the planning commission to go do. But the fact of it is that went through a process, and as long as it's zoned as zoning, a property owner is entitled to specific rights in that. So that's a whole separate issue. This is simply to have some standards, so if someone who has that right to do so has to meet these standards. Okay. Anyone else, public, like to address this? Since you're new, we'll give you just a real brief one to ask a question. Okay. Typically, we don't unless the council waives this rule, but let me ask this. Are any objection to this lady addressing the second time?
No.
So
We'll
just show the record without
with
unanimous consent.
Okay. Then if we've already got a thing for multifamily, then how do we go back and see if that's really what we really want?
That's something the council, in hearing you ask that question tonight, has to ask themselves. Do we now commission the planning commission or staff to go back and look at that? Okay. It is an extensive process. Okay. You have to have public hearings. You don't change things like that by just changing them, because you're changing property owners' rights. And you have to have public hearings published, documented in respect of those.
Okay. I think I understand, but if I don't, I'll be calling.
Okay. We'll come up and visit. We would love to. All right.
Thank you.
Once again, Doug France, Mr. Kocklak. Whenever I ask the questions about the propositions and state laws, and you kind of and stuff at me, I don't appreciate that. I find that childish and immature. And I've got a question for you, sir. Is there a building moratorium in Lowell right now? As I understand it, there was. And if there's not any more, when did y'all pass the ordinance to do away with the building moratorium?
There is a building moratorium still in place. Anyone that hooks onto the Springdale water utility sewer system that provides sewer service within Lowell has to come before this council to get an exemption from that moratorium. If it's on the Rogers sewer system, they do not. This council about 2 months ago voted and changed that. Where if they're on the Rogers system, they do not have to.
Yes, sir. All right, very good. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else like to address this item in regard to the multifamily housing? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public forum on that. I don't know if we need any further discussion or anybody have any more questions before realize this will be before you again the next city council meeting. All right, next item is the ordinance to rezone. Also on by the Planning Commission. Do we have a presenter for that, Mr. Carnahan, on the rezone?
Yes, I believe the developer is here. If he wants to come forward.
Okay.
Go. This is out on South Gold Springs Road and fronts the Interstate 540 right-of-way between Gold Springs Road and Interstate 540. You want to go ahead and tell them about it?
The proposed rezoning is for approximately 14.2 acres that sits at Gold Springs and Puppy Creek Road. They're directly across Interstate 540 from the J.B. Hunt. the proposed rezoning is basically split into two levels. There is about 10.77 acres that sits at 540 level, and then approximately 3.43 acres that sits about 40 feet below that grade down at the corner of Puppy Creek and Goat Springs. And the rezoning is for that upper 10.77 to be rezoned commercial, and that lower 3.43 to be rezoned RA. It currently is zoned RA, but to do the split of those two, and keep that residential with the residential that is across Goat Springs Road from it, and then the upper portion commercial.
Okay. If you just hold a seat here, we're going to allow the public to comment on this, and then we'll present it to the council. Does anybody from the public want to address this rezone? Okay. Seeing none, we'll close the public forum then. Any questions for, I'm sorry, I missed your name, sir.
I'm sorry, my name is Whitney Weeks. I'm here on behalf of Monroe Looney.
For Mr. Weeks. Okay. Mr. Wright.
Move that the rules be suspended and this ordinance be placed on third and final reading by title only.
Second.
Okay, motion properly made by Mr. Wright, seconded by Mr. Morrill to suspend the rule to place on third and final reading. So this will take 2/3 to do so. Ms. Clerk, call the roll, please.
Mr. Spurlock?
No.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Mr. Morrill?
Yes.
Ms. Latham?
Yes.
Mr. Solomon?
Yes.
Mr. Brock?
Yes.
Mrs. Hauserman?
No.
Okay, with 6 yes, so 2/3 does carry. An ordinance amending the City of Lowell Code of Ordinances, Section 8-102, by rezoning certain lands from residential ARA and MHP Mobile Home Park to residential District A, RA, and C Commercial District.
Motion for due pass, please.
Okay, we have a due pass motion by Mr. Morrill. Second by Mr. Solomon. Okay, comments or questions? Mrs. Latham?
Okay, there was a hearing on this, or this is one of those things, the letters went out and there was response from,
Yes, ma'am. Every rezone that comes before the Planning Commission has
what kind of response did we get?
Positive. This particular rezoning came before the Planning Commission on 3 different times. It was originally submitted, I believe, totally as commercial property. That was received some opposition, and so they withdrew that proposal and came back later with this divide between the residential and commercial is a physical bluff above the creek with trees and rocks and so on. If you've driven out there in that area, you'll be familiar with that bluff line, and so that made a natural divide between those properties. And so then they came back and divided it between the commercial part that's up on the high ground facing the interstate and the lower property, as he said, which goes down to Goat Springs Road and Puppy Creek. And at that time they asked that the residential portion be zoned R-D, which is I think 10,000 square foot or 15,000 square foot per lot. And at that meeting, some of the adjoining property owners were concerned about how many homes could be built there. So they again withdrew their application, revisited the situation, and came back and asked that that property be zoned R-A, which is our highest, what I'm saying here, it's 1 lot per acre. It's our least dense residential zone. So at that point then, it had no negative opposition at that Planning Commission meeting, and the Planning Commission, I believe, approved it unanimously and brought it then to here, to the City Council. And Mr. Williams and Mr. Wright can correct me if I got that wrong, but that's my recollection.
Okay. Does that satisfy? Okay. Mr. Spurlock?
Is there anything that is proposed right now for the commercial land to be built on there?
No, sir.
There's not?
There's no proposed commercial.
Okay.
I'd also add that we had extensive conversations in the Planning Commission about there being no large scales on this land until the issue of a road was taken care of with some sort. So.
Anyone else? Okay, with that, we do have a do pass properly made and seconded. With call the roll, please. Yes vote approves the rezone.
Mr. Solomon?
Yes.
Mr. Morrill?
Yes.
Mr. Spurlock?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Latham?
Yes.
Mrs. Houseman?
No.
Yes.
Okay, majority carries, so rezone is granted. That'll take place in, I think, 40 days after the referendum period. Okay.
That'll be ordinance number 769.
Okay, next item is Ms. Jean Generou for a Wardenell Park presentation update.
Good evening, Jean Generou with the City of Lowell. It's been a while since I've had a chance to update the council on the park progress, so tonight I felt was a very appropriate time. We have had quite a big response from the community as we've been planning this park, and I wanted to thank everyone, if I can figure out how to do this. Okay. Wanted to thank all the citizens of Lowell that gave their input at the community hearings, the public hearings that we had in response to the property after we purchased it. Oh. But a lot of planning went into place, and hopefully my slide will stay there. The City Council took faith in the park and appropriated the funding for the initial phase 1 of the park. Mayor Bigger's vision for the park has been a constant throughout the whole planning process, and of course our Parks Committee members have been crucial to this planning process as they've helped review plans and kept the momentum going forward. The street department has been invaluable as they've gone from one deadline to the other at very short notice and a lot of times. And Gary Carnahan's assistance on the project has been just, I can't tell you how great he has been to have on staff. The Benham Company has been very good also, coming up with renderings for me at last minute, giving us pictures and such. Okay. As we've been planning, we've been keeping in mind what kind of standards we wanted to establish for the park. And as you can see here, here's an example of our existing parks. The Heritage Park with the fire engine and the pavilion. The Lowell Park right beside the elementary school. And the existing McClure Park. They're all very highly high quality playground structures. The pavilion that's on the Heritage Park has set the standard for what we would like to see on our new park, and it's kind of what was patterned after when we started doing planning. But we want to ensure that quality, beautification, stability, and value goes into everything that we do for the future when we are doing our planning for the Parks Department. Our planning process has been very many meetings and has included just a rendering that was a dream at the very beginning. This is the Benham's rendering of Phase 1 once we got to a certain point of it becoming more than just an idea. The parks building went from another idea, and of course that quality you see here is mimicked with the architectural features of this building. It is approximately an 1,800 square foot building, so it's not going to be a huge building on the park, but it will be the beginning of a larger community meeting area, and it will also have public restrooms, which was the number one item on the public hearing surveys that we chose. We now have a set of plans that can be used in the future for other standards that we set for the park. And we're putting the scheduling for completion of approximately May of 2001 in anticipation of our summer programs. The groundbreaking on September 30th is yet another step that we've had. It generated quite a bit of enthusiastic attendance from approximately 200 attendees. This park property is surrounded by approximately 500 families, and to get 200 people at that groundbreaking, to include Mr. Nail and Mrs. Nail, that actually came on their own dime from Texas, that was pretty awesome. Of course, we had our trustee park committee members there. We had local business members donating their time with the Arkansas helicopters. Parks Department personnel gave tours of the park with the hayride tour. And I was almost hoarse by the time we were done with that. And of course, the fire department was able to display their lovely equipment, and they took some great pictures from up top there that are pretty neat if you ever want to see them. They're at the office. But we had over 10 businesses donate time and products that we had very little expense for this groundbreaking ceremony, and it was a very well-attended groundbreaking. The bids for this Phase 1 project were opened on October 25th. Our street department began work on the site preparation on November 1st, and Mr. Tony Davis has estimated that we're saving approximately $20,000 using our own street department personnel to do the site preparation for the building pad. Some more progress that we're trying to further is more funding for the park. The Office of Recreation and Outdoor Recreation and Grants Program, we gave a presentation in October, and which was a big step because usually people do not get a presentation in front of their grants committee unless there's a chance that you have of getting some kind of funding. There were 35 applicants with $2,800,000 to give away. And I did just, if they just threw out the chart and everything they do to grade everybody, if they were just to give everybody a portion of that money equally, it would be about $80,000. So I'm pretty hopeful that we're going to get a portion of that funding, if not all of the funding. We had a very good presentation, by the way. The grant should be awarded in December, so we should know sometime in December whether or not we were successful getting that $250,000 to go toward the Phase 2 of the park.
It's a matching.
It is the matching grant that I came forward earlier this year and asked if you would allow us to write that grant. The bids came in, and I wanted to give you an overall estimate of what the costs were going to be to finish out Phase 1. To do the building, parking lot, lighting, site utilities, sidewalks, dumpster area, drinking fountains, yard hydrants, and site amenities is the bid came in at $490,221. The playground equipment has been bid at $34,000. The site work is approximated at $55,000. Landscaping is approximately $10,000. The sign and installation will be approximately $7,500, And then for fees and miscellaneous permitting and things of such, approximately $5,000. That brings our total to Phase 1 at $601,721. We have approximately $350,000 remaining from this year's bond appropriation that was approved in April, which leaves approximately $251,721 left to finish out Phase 1. For Phase 2, if the grant is successful, that we get notice in December, if we were to get the full $250,000, this is how I anticipate that funding to be used. BMX track, basketball, and bank shot equipment. We would be building 2 more bank shot courts in as well as that first one we build in Phase 1. Concession and restrooms, engineering of the project itself, parking and lighting, the pavilion, a playground wall, which is around the Phase 1 playground for the younger kids, site work, skate park, and the additional bank shot courts, which would come to approximately $500,000, which would be that grant and the matching funds the city would put forth. This is an example of the bank shot basketball court. This is the basketball. I think this is the around-the-clock configuration. It is a series of basketball goals in a fixed. They're anchored in the concrete, and as you can see, there's 3 circles that each goal will have, and the different colored circles mean that you get more points as you go out to make the shot. It takes more skill. They're all angled differently, so it can be used for teaching algebraic equations, geometry, physics. It can be used in a side-by-side manner for families with different abilities. And I think there's only 2 other courts in Arkansas of bank shot. So we would not be duplicating services with this kind of a recreational facility. This is the skate park. It is set on a 100-foot by 125-foot pad, and the idea is to begin with a small section of the skateboard equipment, but to pour the entire pad so that as we get future funding, we can add on to the skate park very easily. And then this is an example of what our BMX track could look like, and you can see the parent participation and the child participation. This is a picture of some kids that came to our fall festival, and when I asked them to take a picture, they were very reluctant until I said we could build one of these, and boy, they all came up and got on the ramps, and 8 of these young boys gave me their phone numbers so that once we do get word that we've gotten the outdoor recreation grant, we can begin a committee to help ensuring that the skate park is what will meet their needs. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Jean.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate all your support as a city council. It's been a pleasure.
I want to add a quick comment. We did have a great presentation in Little Rock. We left there feeling like we hit a grand slam home run in the 9th inning, and we were last at bat. So, great Yes, sir.
I just wanted to add, this morning we met with the low bidder of the project, and as you saw, the bids were more than we thought they might be. We went over, we had a good long meeting with them looking, and we're doing value engineering to see what we might be able to take out of the bid, but we still want to establish a standard of quality in the park, something we can all be proud of. I've been in parks in Rogers and Springdale and Fort Smith in the last couple of weeks, and I think it's important. It's something everyone in the city uses. So we'll be looking at that, and our intention is to come back to you again probably in the first meeting in December with a specific report on where we came to with the building and so on. And we're preparing budgets right now, as you all know, so we're putting into the budget, we're carrying forward the money that you had already appropriated from last year forward into '07, the money we haven't spent yet, and then we'll be putting in the additional money that we need to finish that contract so we can build this phase one of the facility. And hopefully by then, maybe we'll even hear about our grant. So just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, next item, actually number 4, has been resolved. We've come to an agreement on that, so we can. Yes, ma'am. On the park. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Okay. I think she means the park. Yeah. Okay.
This park, this phase 1 and phase 2, what I'm wanting to know is what was presented to us at the potluck, as you will, at the senior citizen building. And they showed us a map, which I thought was part of the park thing, where they were going to have a place for the children, girls and boys park, a place for senior citizens, a place for senior citizens like a daycare center. And that was projected to us as a coming thing. I guess what I'm asking is, I'm all for the skate park for the kids. I'm all for everything for the families. But I'm really confused because I thought that what we were presented with yesterday was a running thing. It was coming up real soon. Is that not so? Is it like 10 years from now? I'm confused now.
Let's let Ms. Jean
Okay.
address you there. Thanks.
Yes, you were presented with a plan for the senior and youth activities center, kind of a civic center, and then an adult daycare. We have been planning that. We've been taking steps to establish that. That will be in a separate section of the park than this section that we have just talked about. The first 13.35 acres was land that was purchased with the converted funds from the Lincoln Street Park property. Due to that conversion process, the first 13.35 acres cannot be used for anything other than outdoor recreation. And according to their rules in the outdoor recreation granting procedures, it says that there cannot be any enclosed buildings on that 13.35 acres. So that is one of the reasons, Ms. Jane, why the first 13.35 acres you're seeing all that outdoor recreation. The one building on that property is the Parks building, and I nearly couldn't build that because it had a big meeting room. It was more than just a concession stand. That's why the Parks offices will be there. And it does have that small kitchenette so that we can do some concession giving. And it's due to the fact that first 13.35 acres has to be strictly outdoor recreation in perpetuity. Yes.
What presentation is she talking about?
There was a presentation given to the potluck by Larry Bowen, who is working with us in a consulting capacity to develop some youth and senior services. So that was what we were talking about is
I guess
the
you ought to
progress.
I guess you give more information if you're a senior citizen than on the city council, because that's the first time I've ever heard of it.
Well, I don't think that's true. We've talked this, for a year. The park committee has looked at it. The public meetings have been open. We've had public meetings getting input back. We don't have specifics. We have some conceptuals. This is, as Ms. Jean said, phase one. Next year we will be looking at in-depth details on phase 2 or 3, whatever we call it, which will be a community center use in those areas. We have a lot of discussion going on right now. There's a lot of things on the table. I will say to you, in conjunction with what Ms. Jane has asked and what Jean has presented, I will foresee a not too distant future that Lowell will have a facility that a Boys and Girls Club potentially might be operating for programs and activities for kids, a senior center that's available for seniors to be using. We're getting very close to bringing some very specific details back to you. Beyond that, right now, we're premature. We're waiting, number one, on the grant coming back from the state, and there will be some very, very detailed information to you within the next 60 to 90 days.
And Mayor, also, if you will look on the conceptual plan out in the hall, there is an area beside the aquatic center that is set aside for a civic center, and we just have not put the 3-building structure on there at this time. I just have not had time to get with Benham to get that architectural drawing.
I just think that, you said there's a lot happening with this, and like I say, I just think you guys could do a better job getting the city council involved in that stuff.
I'll keep that in mind, sir.
Okay, real quickly, and then we don't get into.
Fields, I live at 305 West Robinson Avenue at the Senior Citizen. At the potluck, a project was shown to us. It sounded like it was just going to be real quick, and I think it was mispresented. I don't mean to be ugly, but I think it was mispresented. I think it was a political ploy. I felt the potluck was for the senior citizens for their Thanksgiving dinner. I know that we can invite anybody that we want to these dinners, but what was shown to us was it was presented like it was just there. It's going to be there. It's just right down the line. I think it was mispresented after listening to all of this. It makes me very sad, and it makes me a little bit angry. I'm trying not to be angry. I really am. But it was like a political ploy. When I talked to our manager about this, she said that, actually she told me that Jean called her about all this stuff, and she said, well, come to the potluck. And it seemed to me like a political thing. It seemed to me like it was going to be done within just real quick.
Okay.
I don't feel like it was honest.
And I appreciate that, and I'm going to respond just real quickly. And I will say, yes, it is a political thing. For 4 years, we have lobbied the community. We've lobbied the seniors. We've lobbied the youth. We've lobbied the council. We will continue to do so. We are moving forward. The community survey has come back. People overwhelmingly support the parks and recreation. They overwhelmingly support the senior activity programs. I think as the mayor, I absolutely not only would have the right, but have the duty and the absolute responsibility to bring ideas to the community, to the city council. We have to look at funding mechanisms. We have to look at plans. You don't pop and snap your fingers in a moment and come up with a plan. You don't, in a moment, come up with exact idea. We don't have exact ideas in front of you or the planning commission. But you're right. It takes all those things to get it done, and we will continue to do so. We think that is the right thing to do. There's absolutely been no meeting that has not been open to the public for public input, for feedback from the public. We've engaged Mr. Bowen to do exactly that. He's traveled not only around Northwest Arkansas, but the state and beyond, looking at senior facilities, looking at youth activity programs, and that's where we're going. I would have no, we don't want to get a debate on it perhaps tonight, but we've had, I bet, at least 24 public meetings where we've brought input back that we've assimilated, and that's where we're going.
It's okay if that's
Simple.
where you're going.
So,
But, I mean,
Point of
are you
order.
here 10 years, 15 years?
okay.
I just felt like that was a total.
Okay, well, I respect your opinion, but again, it's not a debate item. It's an update to the council tonight. I mean, this is a presentation for them too.
Check on that because I felt like it was a bid for political. And I'm asking every council member here to take that into consideration. Because
Well, we appreciate that, and they're not voting on anything tonight whatsoever. Okay, thanks. Okay, appreciate it.
I have a question
Yes, ma'am.
to Tom.
Yes, ma'am.
You like my questions, don't you?
Always, yes, ma'am.
My question is that is adult daycare, and I also heard is possibility of children daycare.
I thought it was children's recreation, maybe like a clubhouse or a activity center, maybe even a boys and girls club I heard mentioned.
What we have talked about is an adult senior daycare. The other building would be a kitchen that is a commercial size kitchen capable of handling large scale food production, and that would also be dedicated to senior activities. Then there would also be another building that is going to be dedicated to youth activities.
I have some comments to make on the adult daycare. Number one, I am concerned, are we getting into potential private industry or private business?
Ms. Hauser?
And the possible conflict there. The other comment I wish to make insofar as the adult daycare, are we going to have nursing staff there? I mean, how far are we getting into this? If you're talking about adult daycare, a large majority of the adult daycare is involved with Alzheimer patients.
I know that you're well qualified to ask that question, and I think that
Well, I mean,
your background it contains, some professional experience probably that would educate you in that regard. The first question was private enterprise, and as far as I'm concerned, the city won't use that parkland or conduct any business on it that.
No, I was concerned about a conflict with private industry. In other words,
But let's use this space right here as an example. I don't know what city groups, municipal groups, or civic groups use this space, asked to use this space, or other spaces like the Park Pavilion, City Hall conference room. It's not uncommon, though, for cities to allow their common spaces to be used, and as long as you're going to do it for one group, you tend to do it for all. And if someone's going to have a need like the future farmers or the 4-H folks coming together to do some kind of a craft or some kind of a study, they're expected to be able to prepare the space for their need and to clean up after.
and I have no opposition to that at all. I just was very hesitant to see the city get involved in adult daycare, Alzheimer patients, that sometimes the care of those is far more extensive than a volunteer staff would be capable of handling.
And here's how I don't know exactly what's happening here. I haven't seen details, and from what I understand, there aren't details yet. I think there are some concepts and maybe some communication with providers out in the area or groups like Boys and Girls Club. Here's what I anticipate, though, that public space would be leased, most likely, or a public building would be built and then leased to a group, and that can happen. That's quite common also. And that way your community activity is located in public space, but it's leased to a specific group, because I don't see, I'm with you, Ms. Hausman, I don't see the city of Lowell getting into the senior daycare business.
That's what I'm concerned about.
If that's anticipated, I'm going to be surprised.
Yeah.
I don't know that, but I'm going to be surprised. I think your concern is well founded.
If there's an Alzheimer's group within the city and want to utilize the facilities, I have no opposition to that. But I do have an opposition to the city running an adult daycare center.
I mean, I think you and I agree on that. I don't know what exactly they have planned, but we can ask. But
I would say step carefully.
right.
I would encourage any of the city council members to call or walk in my office, and I would be glad to share this information with you. I was unaware that I needed to, make a weekly report to the city council. I thought that's why the Parks Committee and I met on a regular basis. And I would encourage the Parks Committee to set another meeting for December. It sounds like there's probably something needed that needs to be updated. But I would more than highly encourage any one of you as council members to feel comfortable, and future potential council members and citizens of Lowell, concerned citizens of Lowell, to come into my office and talk to me personally about this issue, because it's not a secret. And I would be more than happy to take a large portion of time to talk to you about it if that's needed. Yes.
What's the timing on these buildings that she's talking about?
It is estimated that to build one building of the space requirements that we're looking at, which is approximately 11,500 square feet, is approximately $1.2 million a building. So it depends on how much funding that we can raise and how quickly the city responds to needing the buildings and the services that can go into the buildings.
Let me say, and we've gone into a direction that is not council business tonight. I mean, we've really given leeway and gone in a different direction. Just to take issue a little bit, Ms. Jenny was right. The Parks Committee has met, and they've talked about some of these, if not in detail, some of these. Secondly, things start with ideas and communication. And I'll just say this. Mr. Bozeman came into town about 3 weeks ago, and as we drove him through town, talking about the infrastructure and the potential before Lowell and issues before Lowell, this very issue is probably the hot button, I think, that triggered him as he said, that's a great thing for Lowell and to look how they can help. So there will be other public meetings. There will be public hearings. There's no way tonight for us to go into this and take care of business at City Council because it's not a council issue. It was an update. At the same time, I'm disappointed. There's a feeling like, well, Mr. Solomon, that the staff or administration has not kept council up to date because it's not even at the point to bring it to the council at this moment in time.
Well, I think that's the deal. I think that, I bet if you ask some of the councilmen, they would know about it. I bet others wouldn't.
I have a comment.
Let's point of order, please.
I'm just going to say we're going to close this down. And okay, Mr. Wright.
We have an agenda item. We have, guys.
Oh, point of order. Mike.
Calm down.
Hey.
Mike.
All right, back to order.
Bad enough I have him sending all over town about me and him calling me a liar around town. And then you stand up and say that, sir?
Everybody come to order. Mr. Bowen, please, sir.
Move to recess.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any objection?
I would like to see some members
We are in
of
recess.
the audience leave, too.
We're going to take a 5-minute recess. Okay, if council members within hearing range, please make your way back in, and we're going to come back to order.
I'm driving you there, am I?
Okay, looks like we have enough for a quorum, so we're going to come back to order. Next item is the Northwest Arkansas Center for Children. I think we had in your packets information Mr. Carnahan provided and a need for an additional sewer capacity for the building. So, Mr. Carnahan, if you don't mind.
Actually, I'm not sure we had anything in your packet this time, and I want to bring to your attention what the Northwest Arkansas Center for Children, you'll remember, is a two-story, 40,000 square foot building that's nearing completion, actually, over off of South Dixieland Road. And at the time this was came through the city approval process, we did not ask, they did not ask, and we did not ask for a sewer moratorium exemption because the contractor went to the site, looked in the manhole, and reported that there was a 6-inch sewer tap existing there. So the city of Springdale said, since you are not asking to make a larger tap than what is existing in that existing sewer that had been built with that commercial subdivision, those taps are included as existing taps, and you don't have to ask for a sewer moratorium. So we didn't. We proceeded on. The building's almost completed. They go out to they lay a 6-inch line out from the building out to the street, and the other day they went over there to tie it in, the plumber, and discovered that it was only a 4-inch tap. And so that means, so we went and we've met with plumbing officials, we've met with the building department, we've met with the City of Springdale Water Utilities, and we have scratched our heads, and the bottom line is, in order to be consistent with our agreement with Springdale, we have to count these taps now against our total, and it's 8.78 sewer taps. So I'm here tonight to ask you to approve, or I guess it's I'm not sure what it's called exactly, but to approve the grant to the Northwest Arkansas Center for Children, 8.78 sewer taps.
Mr. Moore?
First of all, I'd like to amend the agenda, please, or make a motion to amend the agenda to consider this.
Well, it's actually it's on
It is on the agenda.
Number 5.
Oh, okay, it is.
It's on the agenda, but we
Okay.
didn't have any
Didn't have the information.
materials in your packet, I don't believe. At the time this came up, it came up rather suddenly, and we didn't have time to put it on there.
I heard a motion over here, I believe. Did I not?
I move to approve the taps.
Second.
Second.
Hauser moves to approve, second by Mr. Morrow. Mr. Wright, comment or question? Okay. Anyone else, comment or question on this? Just, whoops, jumped ahead. I probably should have had public forum on this since we're trying to do every item. Public want to speak to this or address this item?
I just got one question. How many taps will that leave left if you grant this 8.78 taps?
That's going to leave on about 15 taps.
Okay, so 15 taps will be left. Is there any other projects going on that'll use them 15 taps?
Tomorrow someone could walk in and say we need 30. We don't know.
Point of order. I need to clarify. These public comments are strictly for comments and not questions. That's how we got into a jam the last time. So let's stick to the rules, please.
Good point. So,
It's pertaining to this.
I understand, but I'd
so it
say
would
to
be
you,
for a
Mr.
question.
Let me just say, if you want to know answers to those questions, let's call staff weekdays, and we can get you very minute details on those. But I think Mr. Wright is correct.
If
Any other comments?
Yeah. just be cautious that, I mean, with the building moratorium on, that if you grant these, then you could be running down on your taps, and if you're not careful, if you could run out before you get more.
Okay.
I have a question.
With that, anyone else?
I do.
Let me just make sure the public here. Anyone from the public? Okay, with that, we're going to close public forum. Yes, Ms. Latham.
If you said this, I apologize for missing it. Where are we now with Springdale Sewer as far as them possibly releasing more taps to us? Wasn't there discussion at one point that when we got closer, at some particular point with the sewer, they'd start possibly releasing some new taps to us?
That's correct. We have not. I have not gone to them and asked them to remove the moratorium. Basically, at this point, we have at this up until tonight. We had 20-something taps. We didn't have anybody who had made an application in the pipeline. No one's in the pipeline with projects coming down that I can see that we're going to. So I thought it would be wise to wait until we, as long as we could, to approach Springdale with that request so that we could have as strong an appeal as possible. The status, I can give you the status. So anyway, probably getting closer now to the time I need to go do that. Let me give you the status of the construction, though. The good news is that they have connected now the new 24-inch sewer main to the existing Springdale sewer system, and they're laying that pipe down in the valley in Springdale. They've laid it across Puppy Creek Road and are up to the rock quarry. So they're coming this way. They have another crew that is working on both of the boring locations under Interstate 540. If you drive along 540, look off to the right in those two creek beds, you'll see that they are preparing to do the borings under the interstate. They're working on those with a separate crew at the same time. So it's happening. It's exciting.
What is the estimated timing that?
Well, I can tell you that. Good question. The contract, there's a contract date, completion date of July the 2nd. The contractor has to be completed by July the 2nd, or he has a $500 per day penalty clause after that. That includes about 40 days of bad weather included in that 280 days. So we feel like we have enough weather days in there that he won't be coming back for more weather days unless we just have an extremely bad winter. So we feel like that date's a pretty secure date, and he is moving, he's on schedule, moving along real well toward that period, that time period.
So you could say then in 9 months we will have sewer from Springdale?
July the 2nd, whatever that is.
Approximately 9 months.
Also,
Less than 9 months.
Also, I'd like to point out this also is that our agreement with the city of Springdale has included in it a paragraph we asked for, and they agreed to, that a developer may, at any time, go from here forward, choose to get a building permit and build at his own risk, even before the sewer main is completed. So if you're going to build a building that takes 6 months to build, you can go drive down the valley and see where the sewer main is, and you can make a business decision about whether you want to pour footings or start your building or whatever. So that is in place. So at this point, we're getting pretty close to the time. It takes about 6 weeks to go through our large-scale development plan process, and if there's rezoning included, it takes even longer. So we're getting pretty close to the point now that it would be very difficult for someone to start to walk into City Hall with a brand new project on their mind and be able to get it, unless it's a small building, get it built before the sewer main's completed. So we're getting close to that point. I don't know that we're there right today, but if we get to January, the sewer main's finished in July, I think we basically made it to the point where it doesn't matter anymore.
Thank you.
Well, and I would think with regard to the number of sewer taps we have left, I mean, we have circumstances like several months ago, we approved some extra sewer taps for the noodle bar that was going to be on 71 Business. Now I see a sign that says a storage building company going in that same spot. Does that mean the noodle bar is pulled out and not going to be there?
I didn't know about that. Let me check.
I saw a sign this week said coming soon, so-and-so. I saw the property was for sale in the last month, and now it says so-and-so storage building's coming. So I'm thinking, well, we granted some sewer taps there that obviously they're not going to need if they're not putting in a restaurant now. So
We'll look
I
at
think
that.
we may have circumstances like that where we've granted taps that were not used and not needed. So
We have a detailed list, and we'll go back and review that. Good point.
Anyone else? We do have a motion and a second on the floor to grant these. We're going to go ahead and call a roll. A yes vote grants, a no vote would not so.
Mr. Solomon? Mr. Morrill?
Yes.
Mr. Spurlock?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Brock?
yes.
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Mrs. Houseman?
Yes.
Mrs. Latham?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries, so capacity granted.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Oh,
We need to set committee meetings.
we have a motion and a second, so unless we withdraw those, we have a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? By Darren Brock. We are adjourned.